Hello team and welcome back to another Line War cast. This is your map today. It is a 1v1 between someone said that my nickname sucks in blue and Alpha in red. Mostly a land map. There are 3 trade routes in the bottom left. Nickname's going to spawn in the top left, Alpha in the bottom right a little bit. Plenty of refineries all over this map and at the starting locations for both players, so energy shouldn't really be a concern for either side and securing the energy. Town and port for nickname, who's starting off with a lot of eco. Town and 3 industry for Alpha, so pretty much matching exactly what nickname has got eco-wise. And an airport for red as the first producer for units. If there's a second barracks, you almost would think that Alpha is going to go for commando drops. Generally, if we see an airport and 2 barracks, it means that there'll be commandos coming out of the barracks and a transport plane. So there is a transport plane on the airport right now, which pretty much guarantees that Alpha will be going for commando drops. And it's a pretty good spot. This airport will be able to reach this far right island, also this top right island, anywhere on this mainland, and also the bottom left. Nickname's got an airport in the central location right up against this little lake, 2 factories and a barracks. And expect to see tanks out of these blue factories. Very likely. It's an helicopter for nickname as the first plane off of that airport. And the first factory unit for blue is indeed a tank. Alpha follows up with a quick port, so red will technically have more economy, just based on the number of buildings that have been put down. Eco-wise, 443 for blue and 461 for red. Certainly we're going to see this part of the map turn into a very large fight. Very likely. And Alpha's got infantry out of these 2 barracks. These potentially, I mean, I guess actually kind of makes sense. The transport plane is finishing up now, so maybe these should have quote unquote been, you know, commandos from red, but it's not a huge deal. And the beautiful thing about Line War is that you don't have to adhere to like a very strict build order ever. The beauty of the game. First 2 tanks for blue are nearly done. Alpha's adding 2 more barracks. Red will have more infantry because of the number of barracks here. And a helicopter as a follow-up for Alpha on the airport. This is nickname's vision, so none of the buildings are seen by blue except for this town. And now the port, I suppose, just because of the towns and ports don't really have stealth to them. So I suppose this many infantry is enough to see through the fog of war there, but of course none of the buildings for red are exposed. And Alpha, there's no way that Alpha's in range of seeing anything that nickname has got going on. Nickname puts down that first refinery. First helicopter's done for blue, and nickname is also going for commando drops off of this first barracks, or this forward barracks rather. Same thing sort of goes for nickname on this airport. It can reach this potentially not this far right on, actually it probably would actually reach this far for nickname. And there I am, proving myself wrong by hitting tab and seeing the range of this. Nickname won't be able to get to this far right island, or the bottom left island for that matter. So Alpha will be able to take those uncontested with the transport planes. The first one is going to go bottom left, and then a subsequent run is going to go get the far right island, which will be a lot of eco for Alpha over time. Nickname's got 3 tanks moving, 2 more are on the way. As for a second refinery for nickname, right here in the top, pretty safe. And a second helicopter from blue. And the best part about Line War, the most fun part, the early infantry battles taking place in this little field, this little desert. Eco, 543 for blue, 581 for red. I'm fingers crossed for the next line war update having like a replay mechanism so we can actually just see the ecos as the game goes on. Get those fingers crossed in the comments. For good luck. It's still just tank production from Nickname, who has the second commando for this first run of the transport plane, nearly at the airport. And Blue's going to send the helicopters to the front first. Alpha's got 2 transport planes, which is plenty to get commandos all over the map here. And this drop up in the top right is probably Nickname's commando drop. I mean, certainly actually has to be, really. Because Alpha's airport can't reach that far. 3 tanks will be able to deal with quite a number of these infantry. If all the infantry fight at once, even then, I think that 3 tanks would be able to just take this. Especially considering that these 2 helicopters are able to be here without dealing with too much pressure. There's no interceptors, and there's no SAMs for Alpha as of yet. There's no factory for Red. Nickname is the first player to put down a dock and a very sneaky barracks in this forest. First helicopter for Alpha here is pretty big. It will soften up one of the tanks, and when it comes back it should be able to actually destroy one of these tanks if the infantry don't do it first. But with a little bit of micro, Nickname will be able to get the tanks out of here. One of them you can see is on fire, so it'll be difficult. This one, when it gets back into the fight, will likely die very quickly. It's just continued tank production from Blue, so we'll probably see a second refinery relatively quickly. And Alpha's got the first factory on the way now. Doesn't seem like there's any more plans for Nickname to get more transport planes. It is an interceptor, which is next to be constructed. That'll be huge to deal with these red helicopters. And this would look like a close fight, but I believe that Blue will actually take this. But this is why we watch. One of the red helicopters go home because it's at low health. And a lot of this red infantry is nearly dead. 2 tanks, very likely going to be able to deal with that. Income-wise, 661 for Alpha, and 623 for Nickname. So very close, top down. This is what the map is looking like. Alpha is on the bottom left island and the far right island, with 4 commandos on this far right island at this point. Second factory for Alpha on the way, which matches how many factories that Blue has. And this is so far where all the fighting action is. The interceptor from Blue is on the way now. I believe this was actually a tank that destroyed the helicopter. Tanks can shoot at helicopters if they're below them. They don't do a ton of damage, but enough that if a helicopter is very low health, they can finish it off. Here's that second refinery for Nickname, who's running out a little bit on gas just because there is so many tanks being produced. These 2 factories have been making tanks exclusively since the start of the game. Interceptor, the coolest unit in Line War, should be able to take out one of these helicopters. Maybe even the second one as well if it gets low enough health. This is kind of interesting. This looks like it's a commando drop from one of the players. I think this is Alpha's dot command here with the transport plane and commandos. I wonder if a red transport plane actually lands here. I don't know if Alpha would be too happy about that. Alpha's also got a dock here. This is kind of big because of these 2 trade routes and just, you know, there's a little bit of territory that can be capped in this water. Also, it implicitly defends this town and port that Red has put down. And this is where that infantry advantage for Red might come into play. Allows Alpha to kind of push here. It'll be difficult to get too far just because they're going to run up against 5 more tanks. And of course the helicopter count for Nickname continues to grow. On the right hand side of the map, Nickname has a little bit of defender's advantage because this barracks is closer, but both players are now meeting on the right-hand side, which will be a very important part of this fight. Whoever can control this choke, probably going to be in a pretty decent spot. Especially in a split map scenario, this one landmass, such a big deal. Alpha's got a barracks on the bottom left island. Far right island is just being capped with commandos, which probably makes a lot of sense. It feels like a very safe island for Alpha, so no real need to have any producer on that island. First SAM is here for Alpha, which will add more pressure against the helicopters, but it is 6 tanks for Blue. And Nickname's got another town on the way. Drop for Nickname with the transport plane is in a very interesting spot. Nickname's super good with these commandos. It's taking the long way around. Not really sure if Alpha saw this on the way out. Doesn't really seem like it right now, but I suppose for Alpha, even if Red saw this blue transport plane here, it's not really clear where it's going. Huge play from Alpha to drop these commandos on the good side of the airport, so they have a little bit more time before these 3 blue commandos are able to defend. The transport plane will go down in this daring raid. And Alpha gets a pretty good scout, sees that this town is here and being constructed. And another barracks for Alpha, who's building SAMs, also has interceptors on the way. First one is constructed. Second one is being built. The commandos for Blue won't be seen. This is Red's vision. But the territory being taken, it will be seen and is seen. Nickname stops capping, which makes a lot of sense so that the commandos don't actually draw more attention to themselves. And the 3 missile boats for Alpha just a little bit out of range of the helicopters. But it's kind of nice because Alpha can just park these missile boats here, and then if Red has enough SAMs kind of more inland, it becomes very difficult for Nickname to keep air support as they get closer to Alpha's base. Here comes another drop. Alpha decides to turn around with it, probably sensing that maybe the transport plane would just get lost in general, or that the drop would not be effective. And a naval battle is about to happen. Alpha's second refinery is in the water, so it's kind of a big deal for Red to be able to defend this. 3 destroyers from Nickname would be able to take on 3 missile boats. And another barracks for Alpha. More eco for Nickname, so Blue is probably taking the eco lead. Unless the amount of eco that Red is getting from this bottom left island and this far right island is enough. We saw that this refinery exploded. Thankfully, Alpha still has one. But the commandos did their job perfectly here. And economy 873 for Red. 1118 for Nickname. So actually a bigger lead than I even imagined that Nickname would have. Super annoying for Alpha to have to deal with these 2 commandos from Nickname. They already got their values like worth, but just by destroying this refinery, in my opinion. And with some defense, Alpha will likely be able to defend the refinery. In fact, just by showing up with the boats, the 3 blue destroyers will go home, or at least retreat a little bit. A big play to watch out for is that Nickname has an airport on the top right island and a barracks making commandos. This will probably be commando drops. At least one plane will be a transport plane, which will allow Blue to get to this far right island and continue like applying pressure with these drops right on Alpha's main base. So rare situation where a dig-in has probably made sense if Blue just wants to try to fight right through this. These red units get more of a buff. They should be able to take on a little bit, you know, more blue units than there are red units in the defensive line. And that is exactly what's happening with the aid of these infantry that rush down to help out in the defense. More industry from Nickname. Blue is going to launch themselves ahead with all of this economy. Alpha's got one commando here. Can't see the airport because it is in the forest. Nickname puts down 2 more farms and a barracks. And this will slowly turn into a difficult position for Alpha. Even more difficult. Because Blue is going to be making so much more money. Transport boat from Nickname on the left-hand side. With this one barracks, now a second barracks. Blue will be able to seriously contest that bottom left island. And first transport plane is on the way in the top right. Top down, this is what we're looking at. More territory for Nickname as well. Defender's advantage will kick in for Alpha the closer that Blue gets with this push. And Alpha's dealing with a little bit of energy problems. The second refinery is only getting picked up now. And this is Nickname's plan to go across with the transport boat. It is a mix of SAMs and tanks from Alpha. Here come the interceptors. 3 interceptors can take out a helicopter super quickly. But they have to be careful about these SAMs, which should be a little bit stealth because they're in the mountains. Now that the tanks are here, they'll probably be able to have vision. We can actually check. Yeah, all the SAMs are exposed. So Nickname can see them. 2 more factories for Nickname. This is huge for this push. It could potentially just be more tanks that Blue makes. With how close these factories are to Red's base, it could also be a mix of SAMs or even artillery at this point. I mean, Nickname knows that there's a lot of infantry for Red. So a little line of artillery can also do super well against those infantry, since artillery is not necessarily like a direct counter to infantry or anything. Tanks do great as well. SAMs even do fine. You can micro SAMs against infantry and kite them. But a line of artillery as the game goes deeper and just for a raw push can be very effective. There is actually a trade route on the far right. Didn't even notice this. Nickname's going to cap this town territory, so Alpha won't be able to set it up super quickly. First transport plane is done, second one on the way. And tanks doing what they do best, which is running around the army and then jumping on the producers. Nickname has 3 tanks, so the commando is exposed, or rather can be seen. Now that that third tank goes down, the red commando disappears from Blue's vision. And there's a second dock for Nickname. This is a huge problem for Alpha, now that Nickname is taking back this bottom left island. And with the second dock, I suppose that Alpha's actually got a second dock as well, so that's very, very good for Red. They won't, you know, get outnumbered in that naval battle, which would be a huge deal because Alpha would then lose this refinery, also this town and port. And eco-wise, 1426, pardon me, for Nickname, 993 for Alpha. So 500 about advantage in the eco for Nickname, who has another third factory close to the front. It is artillery pieces out of these factories. They might be switched to tanks, but there's still only 2 refineries for Blue. Nickname has access to a third refinery. And actually, Nickname is building a third refinery on the far left by these barracks. Blue has a boat advantage on the numbers, but there are 2 cruisers for Alpha, so they will be able to hit pretty hard in the water. And here comes a drop from Alpha. This could be super important. If Alpha can figure out a way to take back this island, that'd be a big moment in this game. Question is whether Nickname is just too far ahead on the money that it doesn't even really matter. Great push from Alpha. We'll take out these 3 tanks, but probably even this 4th one as well. But the factory unit numbers for Nickname are growing. There's now 5 artillery pieces already completed. Good push from Alpha here with some good air support for the interceptors, who can deal with those helicopters. It'll be difficult for Alpha to take back the top right island just because there are now 3 barracks for Nickname that can help out defend. Very interesting game though. This push in the middle of the map, relatively close. And a Navy situation pretty tense for both players. Nickname actually adds a 3rd dock. And this is a killing move for Nickname to get this barracks up. If it can get up and then build commandos and any number of them, then Nickname can take all this economy back and further grow their lead there. Alpha's got quite the army, but as mentioned, it'll be very difficult for Red to actually push through this choke. This is well within range of any planes that Nickname has. I suppose it's all just helicopters, so the helicopters could go anywhere for blue. And Nickname stuffs this landing. The power of 3 barracks. It's 4 transport planes for Nickname, so watch out for blue to just pull up a bunch of commandos and go for a huge commando drop somewhere on the map. Great play from Alpha to clean up those blue commandos here. Alpha can't see this barracks, which is actually built in a mountain range, technically. This is a mountain barracks. Smallest mountain of all time, but it's enough to provide the stealth bonus, which might turn out to be pretty frustrating for Alpha. Bottom left, Nickname certainly has enough units here now. The 2 barracks are doing a great job to keep supplying this transport boat. And here comes a Navy fight in the bottom left that very much matters. 4 cruisers for Alpha, though, would be able to take on this blue Navy. So for the moment, Alpha's fine down there. A lot of artillery pieces for Nickname. There's a decent number of tanks for Alpha, but of course Nickname has just as many. With this many artillery pieces, for Alpha to be able to destroy this, it either needs a lot of air or a great opportunity for a bunch of red infantry to jump on the artillery pieces before they deploy. In general, but this is a hard army composition for Red to counter. 1043 income for Alpha, 1608 for Nickname, who's also making a lot of money per minute here. With the 3rd dock, over time, Blue will get a bigger navy. Unfortunately for Alpha, Nickname's got way more units down here, way more infantry, so Alpha decides to back up into this mountain range and build a defensive line, which will make it super difficult for Nickname to pass through that line if it gets full of infantry and Alpha can actually fill it. And another airport for Nickname. Probably would expect a very aggressive sort of plane to come out of this, either helicopters or strikers, could even be bombers. And the strength of this airport is they'll be able to help out in the Navy. In this battle, can poke at the gas. Might be able to do some raids on Alpha's starting base. And barracks is now up for nickname. Alpha cleaned up that barracks in the bottom left. This push is a huge problem for red. And it looks like nickname wants to kind of go for it here. Still so many transport planes from nickname on the top right. And this is the plan, so it's going to be however many transport planes can take off, however many commandos there were. It will probably be about 4 of them. An unlucky moment for Alpha, who's going to lose both of these barracks. The number of commandos here for blue is the perfect amount. And as for what Alpha could do to kind of turn the tables here, it feels very tough. There's no real way that red is going to be able to destroy these docks and then be able to destroy these 2 towns. If somehow Alpha could take this fight and destroy the Navy, then, you know, 2 towns would be lost. Probably even 3 towns. This is definitely within range of any Navy. But it'll be very difficult to do this. There's now 3 helicopters here for nickname as well, and none of these are missile boats. Chad always reminds me that cruisers do just as much damage with their machine guns. Like anti-air, they do just as much as a missile boat, which always catches me off guard. So when the helicopters do this and they kind of float over the cruisers, it's pretty good for red. But they still do so much damage, and when they're just outside of the range of the cruisers, then obviously they clean it up pretty quickly. This is going to be a big win for nickname in the Navy, and then potentially blue will be able to just push and destroy all of this. This is a big blob of artillery. Nickname doesn't really have a meat shield of infantry in front of this, but there's enough tanks for blue that Alpha can't really just jump in and try to get on top of the artillery with either their own tanks or infantry. And this is now 8 commandos. They're going to take a lot of Alpha's attention. This is red's vision, so none of these blue commandos are seen. And now nickname is the one digging in the mountains. This makes it absolutely impossible for Alpha to be able to push through this. The only real opportunity that red would have to get through this is to jump right now and try to get through this before all these infantry regain their health from the fatigue damage they take. But even then it's tough because red would just push a little bit. Nickname could back up and defend. There's already a barracks here, and this transport boat continues to reinforce. Constant stream of, well, I guess there was a constant stream of transport planes here from nickname until they ran out of gas. 4th refinery for blue, up by these 3 barracks. And this will be enormous in allowing blue to push down this, whatever the heck we want to call this part of the landmass on the right hand side. And nickname still has the eco lead, 1,003 income for red, 1768 for blue. Unless red has a bunch of helicopters or strikers to deal with this many cruisers, this red refinery is in a lot of trouble. If blue had the energy, I mean, these helicopters by themselves would be able to deal with all of this. And another refinery from nickname. Good defense from Alpha here. But the far right island, this is looking very good for nickname on taking this back. And there actually are starting to be helicopters here for blue as well that can help take this far right island. Artillery count for nickname is still very strong in this push. And I believe this is very close to game. at this point. Because Alpha's going to lose this town and this port, both these docks. We'll also be able to, like, lose this refinery, because the boats for Blue would be able to actually destroy this and hit this from the water. And there's still a lot of stuff. It's a tough situation now for Alpha, because there's only 2 SAMs here. But Red can't really afford to make SAMs themselves. They need to keep making tanks and artillery pieces or to defend against this push from Blue. So many Blue infantry flowing in from the north. And still more commandos just dropping. We might even see Nickname put down like a factory or some sort of producer in the mountains here. Which will add even more to a second front push if that was what Nickname decided to do. But we'll never know. Well played. GG. Let's look at some graphs. That's what we're here for. And income-wise, I feel like I thought it was closer at the beginning, but then I guess it wasn't really. I don't know. What a game. Line War. Always fun. Always entertaining. I hope you enjoyed this video. And that's about all I've got for you. Have a wonderful night, day, evening, whatever it is. Long live Line War. Peace.